And traditionally, within the church as a whole, this begins the season of preparation for God's people to fully embrace the birth of Jesus. And today we're talking about hope. And there's a lot that we're going to be exploring about hope. And I think what was just shared probably is the best illustration of bringing hope to those that need it the most. This is one of my favorite times of the year because we can start to sense, that aspect of Christmas is coming. Yesterday, our sons were here, so we had, in order to eat turkey and dressing, they had to commit to bringing up all the Christmas stuff out of the basement. Houses down the street are already have lights on them, and when you've gone shopping, you're already hearing the festive music, and you can eat all kinds of holiday goodies now, and it's like it's that time of year. And this morning we're beginning this brand new series and focus called "Behold, a Savior is Born." And so to kick things off here for just a few minutes, I just want to say this. Thousands of years ago, there were prophets in the Old Testament who wrote about the future day when God would send his Savior to his people. And he would make a way for all the things to be healed from the devastating effects of sin. And it's during this season here that we celebrate that in a dirty stable in Bethlehem long ago, there was born a baby who would change the world by bringing eternal hope. And to really enjoy Christmas, I think you have to embrace hope. This happens in many ways, but one of the things that I remember as when I was a kid, every day kind of leading up, the week before Christmas at our house when I was growing up, presents would start to appear under the tree little by little. It wasn't just all at one time. At our house, it was little by little. And I would look under the tree and I would hope that perhaps that was one of the things on my list. You know what I'm talking about? And so I had this hope. From that longing that what would be wrapped was what I was waiting to open. And that was the beginning of hope being instilled in my young heart. But this hope that every child feels is pointing to something bigger and greater and more meaningful than any earthly store could ever provide. As fun as it was to make the list and to wait to open those presents during the holidays, the bigger picture behind the holiday is because of Jesus' birth. And because of that, we have hope that our greater desires beyond electronics and toys and jewelry, that we have this greater things like purpose and meaning and significance, forgiveness, and wholeness. These are available to us. And we don't have to wait to open these gifts. When we place our faith in Jesus, they're ours. And that reality fills us with hope, no matter what the circumstances or the situation that we find ourselves in. We have hope. And so there's just a few things that we find that give us hope. First of all, the signs of God give us hope. All the signs. The people of God in the Old Testament were waiting and hoping for God to fulfill this promise to bless them and through them bless the entire world. And they were hoping for a Messiah. And the Messiah would be sent to rescue and to heal all of creation from the destructive effects of sin. And the prophet Isaiah wrote about this 100 years before the birth of Jesus. Look at Isaiah chapter 7, verse 14. It says, "Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel." So hundreds of years before Mary and Joseph came to Bethlehem, hundreds of years before there was ever a crowded inn that had no room, hundreds of years before a dusty old stable, God had spoken hope through the prophets. And the signs of God working in your life will often be the things that you could not produce on your own. And you see God working And they will be the things that only God can do. And that is where hope is born. So the signs of God, they give us hope. But something else gives us hope. God with us gives us hope. It is in the name given to this child that is really interesting in the passage there in Isaiah. It says, he will be called Emmanuel. And this is a Hebrew term that means God with us. When creation cried out for help, God didn't tell it to get its act together, and then he would show up. We still don't have our act together, but he has shown up. God saw all that he had made and that it needed rescue, and he made the first move to come toward us. In Romans chapter 5, verse 8, Paul says this. He says, but God demonstrates his love for us in this. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. God did not come to us because we deserve it. He didn't come to us because we've earned it. He came to us because he loves us, and he knew we could not get ourselves out of the mess of sin that we're in. In the book Unfinished Business, there's a story. One night at dinner, a man who had spent his summers in Maine, he fascinated his companions by telling of this experience in a little town named Flagstaff. What was going to happen in Flagstaff, the town was to be flooded because there was a large lake in which the dam had to be built. And so in the months before it was to be flooded, all improvements and repairs in this whole little town stopped. Nothing was fixed. I mean, what was the use of painting a house if it was going to be covered in water in 6 months? And why repair anything in the whole village just so that it would be wiped out? And then he added this explanation. Look at this line. He said, where there is no faith in the future, there's no power in the present. Where there's no faith in the future, there's no power in the present. You know, far too many of us have mentally become this old town. We've stopped believing that God is with us. And so therefore, nothing will ever get better. We've stopped hoping for a change in the wind or a bit of a new life. But when we give hope, it becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So here's the good news. There was a virgin who gave birth. A child was born. And as Emmanuel, God with us. He is with us. Never lose heart. So we can have hope because of the signs that were given. We can have hope because of the name that was given. But there's one more thing. Jesus' sacrifice gives us hope. You see, the story of Jesus is bookend with two major events. The first is his birth that we read about here, like in Isaiah chapter 7, where the virgin will give birth. The second event is what confirms the hope that we have. The second event is found prophetically spoken just a few chapters later in Isaiah. In Isaiah chapter 53, this is what we find. Isaiah 53:5 says, but he was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. And the punishment that brought us peace was on him. And by his wounds, we are healed. You see, hundreds of years before Jesus grows up to be a man and carries out 3 years of powerful ministry, hundreds of years before he was arrested and crucified and killed, Isaiah writes about how the manger will lead to the cross. Jesus was pierced in his hands and his feet by the nails holding him to the cross. He was crushed and beaten by his accusers. He was punished for the wrongdoings that he never committed himself. And he received wounds on our behalf. So it is by the suffering that he went through that we have freedom from our sin and we have freedom from our rebellion. And though you and I are deserving of death and the penalty for all that the sinful things we have done, Jesus took it upon himself. You know, I've heard someone once say that if Christmas is the promise, then Easter is the proof. If Christmas is the promise, then Easter is the proof. We celebrate Christmas because we know that the resurrection is coming. It is hope. And this holiday season, may our hearts be filled with the hope that is ours in the birth and in the life and in the death and in the resurrection of Jesus Christ.